Hello, my dears. So, we've seen a lot of young people express that they are completely exhausted with modern dating, and I guess I just kind of assumed that this was a problem that mainly young people were having, but it seems like the older generation aren't having a great time either. This New York Times article has sparked a lot of debate about the current state of modern dating. The author of the article states that she's 54 years old, and she draws a lot of comparisons between how things used to be versus how things are today. Within the article, the author describes how she was supposed to go on a date with a man who she met on a dating app. However, he cancelled on her last minute, but she still decided to go by herself to make the reservation. And while she was at this restaurant, she decided to people watch. And what she noticed was just the lack of men who were present at this restaurant. And it seems to be because of this that she concludes that men are disappearing from public life. Also, her own romantic experiences have led her to conclude that a lot of men just aren't interested in dating anymore, or at least not interested in dating seriously anymore. As she writes, I remember when part of heterosexual male culture involved showing up with a woman to signal something, status, success, desirability. Women were once signifiers of value, even to other men. It wasn't always healthy, but it meant that men had to show up and put in some effort. This dynamic has quietly collapsed. We have moved into an era where many men no longer seek women to impress other men or to connect across difference. They perform elsewhere, alone. They filtered us out. What she's describing here is definitely something that we have moved away from. You know, this idea of women being viewed as trophies or prizes to show off and signal status. And I wouldn't say it's something that disappeared quietly either. I would say that it collapsed loudly with audible cheers on its way down. The thing is, as we have strived for more gender equality, the idea of viewing a woman as a prize or a trophy has also died with it. You can't be an equal and a prize or a trophy at the same time. She continues on within the article to say that men have essentially retreated to the digital world, and things like pornography have made them a lot less interested in having real world relationships. Something that she has received a lot of criticism for, because she admits within the article that she worked at Playboy for years, and so many people are accusing her of creating the very monster that she's now very critical of. Then her article basically ends with a letter to men in which she writes, "So here's what I'll say. You are missed, not just by me, but the world you once helped to shape. We remember you, the version of you that lingered at the table, that laughed from the chest, that asked questions and waited for answers, that touched without taking, that listened, really listened when women spoke. You are not gone, but your presence is thinning, in restaurants, in friendships, in the slow rituals of romantic emergence. You've retreated, not in malice, but into something softer and harder all at once. Avoidance, exhaustion, disrepair. Maybe no one taught you how to stay. Maybe you tried once and it hurt. Maybe the world told you your role was to provide, to perform, to protect, and never to feel. But here's what's real. We never needed you to be perfect. We needed you to be with us. Not above, not muted, not masked, just with. And you can still come back. Not by becoming someone else, but by remembering what connection feels like when it's honest and slow, when it's earned and messy and sacred. We're still here, those of us who are willing to co-create something true. We are not impossible to please. We're not asking for performances. We are asking for presence, for courage, for breath and eye contact, and the ability to say, I'm here. I don't know how to do this perfectly, but I want to try. Come back. Not with flowers or fireworks, but with willingness, with your whole beautiful, imperfect heart. We're still here, and we haven't stopped hoping. As for me, I'll keep showing up, not because I'm waiting, because I know what it feels like when someone finally arrives." Now, this has sparked a lot of debate among both men and women online, particularly men and women within her age group, because I guess a lot of the stuff that she's talking about is stuff that they can also relate to from their own experiences. So some of the men on Reddit had a lot to say about this piece. If anyone doesn't want to read a think piece from a woman coming from the administrative side of the corn industry, I will summarize it. Oh no! Men aren't at fussy Instagrammable restaurants. They must only be online. Also, this one guy never wanted to see me again after I flaked on a date last minute to watch my son play hockey. Please come chase us. In particular you. One guy who hasn't answered my text, even though we spent the last 20 years saying unwanted attention is assault. Hilarious that the author understands culture moved past chivalry and the corn culture has commodified bodies so much it's devalued romance, but stops short of realizing the egalitarian society both genders want require an equal amount of attention and care being extended between men and women, and typically women just don't feel comfortable doing that. Her describing corn as an empty experience stands in ignorance to the equally, if not more, empty experiences I hear my friends describing from using dating apps. I got married years ago to avoid these headaches, but it's pretty obvious from the outside, guys are deep down sensitive and want the same attention women want, but are culturally still not allowed to ask for it, so they just beat off instead. A lot of men criticised her for the fact that she can acknowledge how the digital world, as well as the corn industry, has had a big impact on the dynamics between men and women. However, she fails to acknowledge how feminism and egalitarianism has very much changed the dynamics between men and women, which has also contributed to a lot of the issues that she's talking about, and is also a big reason as to why some of the stuff that she's reminiscing about no longer exist or no longer happen, or at least don't happen as much as they used to. There were also a lot of narcissism accusations, with some men even arguing that she's actually dehumanizing men a lot within her article. As one person wrote, "Good lord, this is just I wish I was at brunch, but for gender discourse. She just wants a prop. All the ways she articulates the physical presence of a man are the ways in which a man reflects her energy back to her. She doesn't care what he gets out of it, just what his presence does for her. She's 50. Her destined man has a belly like a beach ball and 2 ex-wives, and he still gets up at 4 to be at the yard on time. He's not going to brunch. Ever." Now, unfortunately for the author of this article, it wasn't just men who had a lot of negative things to say about it. She also got a ton of criticism from women her own age. One woman commented, "I think it's good they are gone because there's less clutter." Then there were the usual unoriginal pick-me comments, with one person commenting, "Are you there, men? It's me. Pick Misha." And also women as well criticised her for being part of the problem that she's now complaining about because of her history with Playboy. As one woman wrote, "The complete irony is that she worked for Playboy and still can't see the connection. What does she expect to happen after 20 plus years of socially programming men to prioritise meaningless sex and sexual exploitation of women's bodies over healthy connection, communication and intimacy? She helped to construct the mental cage that men have readily placed themselves into and now poses the question, where did the men go? Like it's some mystery. They are literally busy jacking off to her life's work." And then past that, the comments were really just a whole bunch of women joking about the fact that they don't care if men return or they don't want men to return. And then a lot of people criticising her, saying she has a very unrealistic Disney-esque idea of how she thinks men are. I'll be honest, there is one thing that I was kind of skeptical of when I read the article, and it's her conclusion that men are retreating from public life. It seems as though it was based on what she saw when she went to the restaurant. She claims that when she went to the restaurant, she saw groups of women at tables, she saw women by themselves at tables, and she only saw 2 men there who looked like they were on dates. And outside of that, it was very, very obvious that men were very, very absent. Now, the reason why I'm skeptical of this is because I think this would be like a man going to like a football match or any kind of sports match, to be fair, and observing the lack of women there and then concluding that because there aren't a lot of women there and it's mostly filled with men, this is a sign that women are retreating from public life. Because I do wonder if what she's really observing is just the differences between the sexes. Now, maybe she's based this idea that men are retreating from public life based on other things that she's also seen. Maybe she's not only seen that they're not present in the restaurants, but she's also been to other places and she's also noticed the lack of them there. But she does specifically talk about the restaurant, so it seems as though that is the main source. That's her main source basically for coming to this conclusion. And so it does make me kind of wonder, are you observing the fact that men are retreating from public life, or could it be more so that you're just observing the differences between the sexes in terms of like hobbies and interests? Because I would say that typically women, from my experience at least anyway, women tend to enjoy eating out at restaurants as a social activity or even as a self-care treat to themselves a lot more than men do. It's not to say that men don't like restaurants, because they do, but it's just probably I've have not witnessed it be the first thing they think to do when they go and hang out with their guy friends, or something that they voluntarily choose to do alone. They tend to do other things. And I won't be surprised as well if there's a correlation between how frequently men go to restaurants and whether or not they're in a relationship with or married to a woman. Because if I had to guess, I would guess that men who are in relationships with women probably go to restaurants a lot more often than single men. People also took issue with her making it seem like men just decided that they no longer wanted to pursue women or pursue romantic relationships, as many of them stated that they actually felt as though they've kind of been forced into this position of keeping their distance from women and not bothering to pursue love because of the current cultural climate. There were a lot of people blaming all of this on feminism and saying, you know, feminism has made it so that men are scared to approach women because they're scared of potentially offending a woman. And so a lot of men now feel as though there's a lot of risk now with approaching women, especially as a lot of men have expressed that they're also just scared to be blasted on social media. So they won't approach a woman or try to make a move on a woman because they've had situations maybe where they've tried to approach a girl or they've tried to, you know, talk to a woman on social media, and the girl has then posted it and humiliated him in front of loads of people. And so because of all of these different things, a lot of men now feel as though, a lot of young men in particular, I would say, feel that there's an added risk now with trying to pursue some women because of the fact that you just don't know how they're going to act. And so they just choose to just avoid it altogether. I've also seen some men argue that the new order of things where women are now going out to work, they can earn their own money and often can be very, very successful and take care of themselves without the need of the man, is also another thing that's contributing to these new dynamics where men don't really know what it now is that they can offer women that a woman can't offer for herself. And so a lot of men just don't feel confident approaching women because they don't really see the value that they can offer to a woman, as well as women also not seeing the value that a man can offer to them, I guess is my understanding of this argument. So because of that, some people are arguing that because feminism has worked to create this more egalitarian society, it has made all the reasons why women were used to be attracted to men no longer the main things that they're looking for now. And so it's made it a lot harder for men to know how to be attractive to women or to know what value they can offer to a woman in order to kind of lean into that. And so because some men are arguing that has led them to the conclusion that the only way that this is going to be resolved is essentially to go back to the 1950s where women didn't really work, or women weren't able to be financial providers or weren't financial providers, and men were the ones who were taking care of women and the ones who were looking after them and the financial breadwinners, basically. They think that that's the reason why we have to kind of go back to the original order. And I don't know how successful that's going to be, to be honest with you. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't see a lot of women willingly going back. So, yeah. I also do think it's kind of unfair to blame feminism for all of this, because while I do think feminism has had a part to play in terms of murdering chivalry, as well as, you know, making a lot of men feel uncomfortable to pursue women, because I do agree that some of the things that classify as harassment are a bit of a stretch, in my opinion. Like, someone who you're not attracted to trying to talk to you is not harassment. It doesn't become harassment just because you think the guy is unattractive. Like, that's not really how it works. Like, harassment should be very, very clearly defined as someone who relentlessly tries to pursue you even though you've repeatedly said you're not interested and you would like them to stop. It shouldn't just be that first initial interaction counts as harassment because you don't find them attractive. But I do agree that the bar of entry for what is considered harassment being so low has probably definitely affected a lot of men. The ones who are normal, shall we say, I don't know, is that mean to say? The men who are respectful of boundaries will probably listen. The kind of men that you probably would want to approach you, really, are probably going to listen to you saying, oh, don't approach a woman in public, don't do this, don't do that, because it's harassment or whatever. And so they're just not going to approach women. And the only people who will still approach women are the ones who are just socially, like, inept, essentially. Like, the men who just are completely oblivious to social cues or social norms and just don't care. Like, so it ends up being a case where you only get hit on by the guys that you don't really want. So I do agree that to some degree feminism has kind of contributed a little bit to that. I think it is true that it's made it more tricky for men to know how to approach a woman without offending her. So I do see how feminism has played a role. However, I also think that we really don't talk enough about how technological advancements and developments have also had a big role in shifting our societies. And I think it would be quite naive of us to think that that hasn't also affected the dynamics between men and women. I didn't articulate myself clearly here, so I'm going to try again. What I meant to say was, I think that we sometimes give social movements, like feminism for example, a bit too much credit. Because how much of some of the changes that we're seeing in our society are due to social movements, and how much of them are just the inevitable cultural shifts that take place because of technology advancing? Like, for example, back in the day, a lot of jobs were a lot more physical and there was a lot more manual labor jobs like coal mining and all this kind of stuff. And during a time like that, men would have the upper hand because they're physically stronger than women. And so they would have the upper hand in terms of the workforce and in terms of potentially earning more than women as a result of that. A lot of new jobs now are very computer based. That has also helped a lot in terms of creating egalitarian societies, because it's allowed the sex differences between men and women to be a lot less obvious and a lot less apparent within the workforce, which has opened the doors in terms of the kind of jobs that women can do, and also has paved the way for them to be able to be now in the position where they're in, where many of them are outperforming men and also out-earning men within the workplace. But the problem that we have is that our biology doesn't advance as quickly as technology does. So even though many women are now actually outperforming men, a lot of them are still attracted to men who are able to offer stability and offer to able financial security. And so that has obviously caused a lot of issues within the dating world. However, you can't put that down to feminism though, because to me that would seem like just an inevitable side effect of technology advancing, which is probably why we also see that there's a big pattern between low birth rates and advanced societies. The more developed a country is, the less marriages and the less birth rates typically that country will have. And I think the fact that we tend to find that these trends are cross-cultural also kind of goes to show that technology probably plays a bigger role than the social movements themselves, because even in countries where we're also seeing lower rates of marriages, lower rates of birth rates, the things that they have in common is the fact that they're developed and they're technologically advanced. However, not all of these countries necessarily have positive views of feminism, or feminism doesn't necessarily have a really strong presence within the culture. So I do sometimes think that we don't talk enough about how technology has drastically changed our societies, and that has also played a big role in terms of how men and women interact with each other, because the technology itself has changed the positions of men within society. So sometimes I do think maybe we talk a bit too much about feminism, because maybe some of these things would have happened anyway even without feminism. So much has changed in terms of society and how it's structured and how it's set up. It's caused the rules of the game to completely change, but no one's been given the new instructions on how to play. But that is really all for this video. Do let me know what your thoughts are on this. Do you agree with the author that men are retreating from public life and also just kind of tapping out on dating? Do you agree with all of the criticisms that people have of her? And why do you think men and women are having such a hard time dating today? Like, based on your own observations, maybe from your own experience, why do you think dating has become so difficult for young people? And older people, as it seems, because as we've seen, she said she's 54. She's also experiencing a lot of similar issues. So it's not an age thing, it's not a generational thing. It seems like it's more of a product of our time. So why do you think a lot of this is happening? Do let me know in the comments. If you found this video interesting, you may as well give it a like. If you'd like to see more content from me, then please subscribe. Thank you so much for giving me your time today, and I will see you in my next video.